Welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Export Readiness, Asking the Tough Questions. My name is Ryan Reed from BioNB, and thank you for joining us this afternoon to take some time out of your busy schedules to learn more about exporting. Today's presenter is Joey Volpé. Joey is the International Business Development Officer here at BioNB. He's got 15 years experience in business development in a variety of capacities. Joey's been working with the team at BioNB for a few years, and he actually joined us on our staff last fall. And Joey's got a lot of experience in developing new businesses. He's got experience in bioscience sector and experience in exporting, and working in both public, private, and academic sectors as well. So we're really happy to have Joey on our team full-time, and I asked Joey if he could help us with this webinar on exporting, because that's the area that he's working in with our clients, helping to support our clients in their export plans. My name is Ryan Reed. I've hosted a few webinars here at BioNB over the past year. I work with the startups. We have about 40 on our roster right now. In my background, I worked in a number of startups, mainly in IT. I also teach in the UNB program, or the MBA program up at UNB. And a little bit about BioNB. We are the voice of the bioscience sector in New Brunswick. We're a non-for-profit, non-government agency, and we've been around for about just over 20 years. And our goal is to support researchers and entrepreneurs in developing new businesses. We work with startups and we work with mature companies, and that's today's webinar is targeted towards those mature companies, or those companies that are making some revenues or looking at expanding their markets outside of New Brunswick and outside of Canada. So we work with about 40 startups and a number of other mature businesses. So at this point, I'm going to, before I hand over to Joey, I'm just going to talk quickly about some administrivia. The presentation Joey will give will last about 20 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes for questions. If you have a question at any time, just type it into the chat box on the right side of your screen in the panel that appears there, and I will read out the questions to Joey at the end. So anytime you have a question, just type it in there. We're going to send out a copy of the slides within 24 hours, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. You can just sit back and relax. And we do have a catalog of other webinars we've done over the last couple of years. They're all on our website, and that's the address right there. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Joey Volpé.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and good afternoon, and thank you for joining us, everyone. So before we get into the core of the subject, let's just briefly go over the webinar's objectives together. The first objective relates really to preparedness and risk mitigation. Since exporting into new markets requires an investment in resources, both human and financial, it's very important to take what I like to call a measure twice, cut once attitude. Asking the right question is really the first steps towards mitigating risk and increasing your chances of success. The second objective relates to helping you find answers to these tough questions. Today's webinar is aimed at asking the right questions, since it would obviously be impossible for us to answer all of them during the course of a 20-minute webinar. However, for those of you who don't know our team at BioNB, please keep in mind that our mandate is to help support the bioscience community. So anytime, don't hesitate to contact us if we can help you find answers. Our team, we're all there to help. So now let's get into the gist of things. The first and most important question to ask before exporting or attempting to make any kind of sale for that matter is quite simply, do I know my customer persona? A customer persona, for those of you who are not aware, is basically a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data of existing customers. When creating your buyer persona, you should consider customer demographics, buyer behavior patterns, motivations, and his or her goals. Basically, the exercise is about knowing your customers and thinking about your product or service from their perspective. For example, if you're attempting to market a new eco-friendly protein source for the value-added food market, for example, your instincts would probably tell you to start thinking in terms of who the food processors are and how best to market your products to them. And that's obviously an important part of the puzzle, since they'll be the ones purchasing your products directly from you. However, it could also be very useful to think in terms of who will ultimately be the consumer at the retail level. The information you gather when going through this exercise will actually become your sales pitch when you're in front of your direct buyers, in this case, food processors. What you need to demonstrate to them is the fact that there's a solid base of retail customers that will want to purchase their products if they incorporate your eco-friendly protein source. So when attempting to define your customer persona, you should ask yourself some very basic questions like, what kind of people would want to buy your product and pay for your service? How old are they? What gender are they? How much do they earn? With regard to your product or service, what do they want? What do they need? And what are their pain points? That's very important. Only when you've defined your customer persona should you start considering moving into a new market, which brings us to our next important question. Once you know what your ideal buyer looks like, you can then move on to establishing the potential size of your target market. Quite simply put, how many potential customers that fit my profile are in this market? I can't stress enough how important this is, since it's the quickest and best way to determine if attempting to conquer a given market is worth it for your organization or worth the effort. Basically, is the potential return on investment worthwhile, considering the investment in resources, human, financial, or other, required to sell in this export market? In order to help determine this, there's some very basic questions you should ask yourself. First off, very generally, you should consider the market's demographic profile, population, age, spending power, etc. You should also consider the market potential for your products and services. Essentially, what are the current sales of your product or service in that market today? And also, what's the potential size of the market? Is it growing? Is it contracting? Will there be future opportunities? Another very important question, and one in which you need to be realistic when you evaluate, is how much of the market share can you reasonably take on? Are there different market segments? Do you want to compete in all of them? Pricing is also very important in terms of hitting a new market, and this webinar is not long enough for us to even consider the issue, but you definitely need to at least ask yourself, what's the in-market price point for my product and service? So now, for the sake of argument, let's say we've defined our customer persona and established that there is an interesting market for our product or service in a given jurisdiction. One of the crucial next steps is then to consider the competitive landscape in that market. This is an essential analysis, since even if the market's huge and expanding, maybe the competition is already solidly established and effectively catering to it. This obviously makes market access and penetration exceedingly difficult. In terms of gauging the competition, you should start by asking how many of them are operating or selling in the market. Simple question, very important. You should also not be afraid to compare yourself honestly to your competition. For example, try to find the available industry standards and how you measure up. Also, define exactly what your competitors sell and how that can be differentiated from your value proposition. What could you do to compete with these businesses? What are these businesses doing well or poorly compared to you? Finally, and most importantly, try to establish how they seem to be doing. Do they look like healthy, thriving businesses, or are they ragtag operations? That's usually a good sign of the health of a market. So we've established who we're selling to, how many of them are potential clients, and how many of them we could sell to given the competitive landscape. Another important thing to consider is the context. In the context of international sale, is what effect would selling to all these customers have on our production and finances? Simply put, can you supply and finance this expansion into international markets given your current capacity and financial situation? Remember, as mentioned previously, exporting requires very substantial investments in time, energy, and money. Asking yourself the right questions on that front can serve as a good stress test in terms of your company's ability to meet the required demands when it comes to production and financing for a given market. On that front, some of the very basic questions to consider are, Have you calculated the timeline for your return on investment following market entry? Do you have the cash flow do you have at your disposal cash flow projections that include business development costs? Have you considered the various international business financing options to ensure payment for products or services? Can your production capacity meet the extra demand, and what is your lead time to do so? If you're confident in the market's potential and in your company's ability to finance and produce what is required to fill the gap, the next question to ask is basically, how will I get these products and services to my clients' doorsteps? That's where channels and logistics come in. Just very briefly, business logistics is essentially the planning process as well as the implementation of efficient and effective storage of raw materials, inventory, finished goods, and services. It also refers to the flow of transportation of product from the warehouse to the customer. The importance of logistics cannot be overstated in today's globalized marketplace. Solid planning and consideration of this aspect of exporting is absolutely crucial to having success in any export market. Developing the proper channels and having the right logistics at the international level is almost always based on developing solid partnerships. Please, when you're considering this, don't go it alone. There are many options on that front, and you need to seriously consider which one is the best for your business. Just to name a few options, we have distributors, brokers, agents, direct sales, web sales, retailer networks, franchise networks, licensing, joint ventures, co-marketing, co-production, and the list goes on. Before selling anything on the international front, you need to consider your options, reach out to potential partners, and find the right fit for your business. Another very important aspect of international business is the applicable regulatory framework. This aspect of exporting can seem like a never-ending maze and should be considered long before your products are packaged and ready for sale. I've seen many clients have their export projects suffer delays and obstacles because of the ever-increasing regulatory body applicable to selling certain products and services at the international level. Like channels and logistics, this aspect often requires partners with experience on that front, at least initially. In fact, these same logistic partners are often an excellent source of information and support in terms of regulatory frameworks. Very briefly, some of the basic questions to consider are, what's the regulatory framework applicable to your products and services? Are there any packaging and labeling requirements? Are you aware of the certifications and international standards applicable? What are the required permits to sell your product and services? Are there any potential liability issues? Are there trade agreements enforced between Canada and the target market? So as you can see, there's lots to evaluate there. One aspect of developing export markets that's too often neglected is the consideration of environment and culture. You absolutely need to consider the environment and culture of the target market you're evaluating. In Canada, we're used to doing business mainly with the US, which has a very similar environment and culture to ours, but this is certainly not the case for all export markets. Before going into market, or even before developing partnerships in those markets, you should consider doing a little research based on very simple, yet very effective pestle analysis. Gather some basic information and consider your target market in terms of the political, economic, social, technological, environmental, legal framework in that given jurisdiction. Language is also crucial to doing business anywhere. So if there isn't someone on the company staff that speaks the language and knows the business culture, find a partner that can help you with that. International client and business relationships are hard to develop and harder to maintain. Understanding your customers and in-market partners' culture and environment can go a long way in helping you on that front. At the very least, it'll help you avoid making costly mistakes and faux pas. So today's webinar was aimed at asking some basic questions to address before conquering world markets. We only scratched the surface, but we hope that if you retain one thing, it is the importance of planning before moving forward. We won't get into the planning here, but in addition to making the webinar slides available to you, we'll also send you links to some excellent export plan templates. Don't complicate things, keep it simple, but take the time to look at these, and please don't hesitate to contact us if we can help. That's what we're here for. Our team at BioNB, we certainly don't pretend to have all the answers, but as a team, we're pretty efficient in helping you find them. So finally, I want to just briefly go through some of the key players on the export front. At BioNB, we're there to help the New Brunswick businesses in the bioscience sphere that are trying to develop new markets. So we try to be the entry door in that sector for export. So please contact me or anyone on your team if you're in that sector. And on that front, we'll also be sending you a link to a survey that will help us gather information on your export readiness and ambition. As a team, we're constantly working with various partners to bring business interests to the forefront of many spheres of decision, most notably governmental decision process. So please take the time to answer our survey and help us help you. It only takes about 5-10 minutes depending on your answers, and I can't stress enough how much we'd appreciate this. Now I'll very quickly go through a short list of partners and funding agencies that work in the export sphere. It's important to know that there are many more and they all have their various specialties. So again, please contact us if we can help you in any way, either an introduction or to help you point you in the right direction. First, there's OND and ACOA. Their business development agents are there to help businesses in all aspects of business development, including export. And what's nice about both these agencies is that they have agents in almost every region of the province. Second, there's LearnSphere. LearnSphere has excellent funding programs and a very interesting portal that they've put together where you can find loads of information on export. I strongly encourage you to go see the Export NB portal and look at the information available. It's an excellent start. The Canadian Trade and Commissioners Service has many hats on the export front, but their main expertise is leveraging their commissioners established in various markets all over the world in order to help you and other businesses with feet on the ground and for in-market support and specific market intel in a given market. Export Development Canada, they're mostly involved when it comes to international financing options, but they also have people that help with various aspects of exporting. Trade and Foreign Affairs are specialists when it comes to exporting into developing countries. So if that's your target market, you really need to talk to these folks. The Canada Business Network also has very interesting tools in terms of market research, and there's a very good resource. He's situated in Campbellton, but he travels the province in New Brunswick with Mark Robichaud, and he has amazing market research tools at his disposal. So if you want to get in contact with Mark, please don't hesitate to contact me. As you can see, there are many players in the export sphere, so please don't hesitate to contact us if we can help you navigate this. Our team at BioNB is there to help, so please contact us anytime. So now I guess that's it for me, and I'll turn it over to Ryan to see if there's questions for the question period.
Great, thanks so much, Joey. Just put up the slide with Joey's contact information, his phone number and email address. And as you said, feel free to reach out to Joey to contact him at any time. You can also contact myself as well. But if you're looking at doing export and you have any questions, just give Joey a call or email. We've had a couple questions come in, and if you have a question that's you'd like to get answered, just click that chat arrow for the chat box. It'll pop down, and you can type your message in, and we'll get it. So, Joe, I've got a question here. How can you use the internet for exporting and marketing in international markets?
That's a very good question, and I actually wanted to touch on that during the webinar, but due to time constraints, we kind of limit ourselves to the subjects we're going to deal with. But the internet its main purpose is actually, I would say, market research, and a lot of the questions that we actually dealt with during the webinar, they can't fully be answered, but you can get some really good potential solutions, or at least ways to get to those answers using the internet. There's many examples. For example, LinkedIn, if you're looking to, let's say I'm in the manufacturing sector, the housing manufacturing sector, there are groups on there of housing manufacturers from all over the world. You can go in there, you can look at who is available, who you should contact for your product. It's an amazing tool. Another thing that's very interesting, and this is especially true for like what we like to call northern countries like North America and Europe, and places like that where people are on Facebook, is preparing sort of ghost Facebook ads. In terms of market research, it's a very good tool because it allows you to see who likes your products and even if you're not selling in that market, just using your page to sort of promote them, and then you can see when you put an ad up on Facebook who clicks on it, who's looking at it, if you put a video. So that really helps you know who could potentially be your customer persona and how they could be reached. In terms of internet research, I don't want to go too long on it, but it's a very excellent tool, and we work very closely at BioNB also with the Venn Center. And Jonathan Dunnett there has quite a bit of experience in terms of doing market research, especially based on internet market research and market analysis and competitive intelligence. So we often refer to him when we have clients that have very specific needs on that front. So to answer your question, there are many ways you can use it, and if we can help you in any way, either it's a specific sector or what your needs are, please contact me, and I will point you in the right direction.
Can you specify what kind of market research is available? And I think they're referring to the Canadian Business Network that you mentioned a couple slides ago.
Yes, the Canadian Business Network, and here in New Brunswick especially, I think it's a pilot project, I'm not sure, but they have funding to help businesses do market research, and these services are actually offered free right now to businesses who want to look at certain businesses anyways that want to look at different market potentials. They have access to literally thousands of databases that are sometimes sector specific, that are sometimes regionally specific. For example, if you're looking to sell, let's go back to our protein, our eco protein for the value-added food market. They can pull out, the value-added food market size in various jurisdictions, even in Canada, and I think all over North America. You can say, okay, well, my point is my manufacturer or where I sell is in Moncton, New Brunswick, and how many food processors or how many people or what's the budget allocated to process foods in a 500-kilometer radius, and they can do that for a lot of different places. So I mean, it'd be hard to give you all the details on what they have, but the amount of information they have is amazing, and it can really help you define your market. And what we try to do is that we work closely, especially with people like Mark or Bishop or any of the agents, is we try to prepare you before you go see them, because it saves you a lot of time and energy, and it's a matter sometimes, like we saw today, is asking the right questions, and today's questions were very general and generic, but when you're looking at market potentials, you need to get into specifics, and we can help you get there, and if we can't, we would at least save you some time on that aspect of the work, and then we will make the contact for you. So please, again, if you'd like to try out those tools, please don't hesitate to give me a call, and I'll help you to get a hold of Mark and try to prepare you before you meet him.
Are there any particular funding programs that you could talk about that support travel to foreign markets? I guess sales calls to kind of build your export business.
Yeah, I think in New Brunswick anyways, the one that's used the most, you have a whole host of them, and I won't be able to get in all of them, but again, some of them are sector specific, and some of them are in innovation, but please don't hesitate to contact me and I'll point you in the right direction. But just generally speaking, a good place to start is usually Opportunities New Brunswick. They have some programs for example, if you'd like to go to a trade show, I can't talk on their behalf, but usually the financing looks something like this. They will pay for 50% of your registration fee. They can pay for 50% of your travel expenses. They have per diems in there. They can even cover a part of your plane tickets. So it's there's some good funding, and it usually comes out to about 50%. So that's ONB. ACOA also has funding available, but not to go straight to a trade show for them. Their programs are mostly based on commercialization and different aspects. And you also have, for example, just one example in terms of sector specific, if you're in the agricultural sector or the transformation sector, the Department of Agriculture in New Brunswick has programs that they can help you with going to trade shows, meeting people, and also, and that's a bit more touchy, but government agencies are becoming more and more inclined or leaning towards helping businesses not only get to trade shows, but also if you want to go to visit a client, like a very specific client, you have to show them that there's nice potential. You can't just call someone and say, I'm going to go visit you. There has to be sort of a built-in relationship, a lead at least that's been generated, and a serious potential. But they do offer funding to go. Maybe you say, I've got 5 clients, in France. Well, they can probably help you go to sort of a roadshow and meet those clients and visit them. So there's quite a bit of opportunity in terms of obtaining funding. So again, if you're looking into that, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I'll help point you in the right direction. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, we've got one. We'll do one more question here. We've got how long is the process of researching and choosing a market? How long does that take typically?
It's very dependent on your market. There are some things that have been sold literally for thousands of years. If you're looking to, how much salt is being sold on the planet and what the markets are and where it comes from and where it's being delivered, that's probably relatively easy. It can be done very quickly. And again, it all depends on who you work with and what you're looking for. But in other respects, it can be a little bit more complicated. For example, if you've got a completely new product or service that really isn't out there, it's got a new value proposition, but it's competing with other services, then you have to do a bit of an analysis as to what am I replacing on the market, and then you have to go look at these products or services compared to what you're doing and see what the market are for those and what percentage you think you can get. There's also the question of what market you're looking at. If you're looking at the US market and you're situated in Canada, it's obviously a lot easier. If you're looking at an East African market, which very few people have been into in Canada, then it can get a little more complicated. But it's surprisingly quick, I would say, these days. There's good people out there like the Commissioner's Service. If you're looking for something, in market, you can call them. They'll help you. It's only a matter, if you go it alone, not only will it take you time, but you might get lost somewhere in between. It's quite a process. But if you surround yourself with people like our team at BioNB, whether it's us, whether it's Ven, your ONB, or co-agents, people will help you and point you in the right direction. And it's not always, and I'm not one to recommend the businesses to get trapped in the planning process. You have to make sure you measure twice and cut once, but at one point there's only certain informations you need, and then you have to make a decision. Often, people they have the information they need. I've seen this quite a few times. They kind of just, some businesses or some entrepreneurs sometimes don't want to hear it. If you look at a market and it's too small to, if you have to have a plan expansion to modify a product to hit a certain market, and it costs you, $20 million to sort of review your process and adapt your plant, and you've got a 1 million a year potential market, then the investment's probably not there. So you have your answer. Your research can be done relatively quickly, but then it cannot become an exercise in legitimating, bringing legitimacy to a bad decision. So usually, making decisions, it can be done relatively quickly. I can't really tell you it's 1 day, 5 days, 6 months, but and there's also, you asked me about market research, but that's the first step. It's mostly a vetting exercise as should I go in there or not. But then when you're getting into quirks of things, of actually going into market and meeting partners, then that's another step of the process, and that can take a little longer, and you have to establish relationships, and business relationships are no different than other relationships. It takes time, and it has to build trust, and you have to get to know your partners. So I'd say really it's depending on product, market, and several other factors, like the entrepreneur's experience in that market's also a big factor. So what I tell you, it's gotten shorter since I've been doing this, mostly because of databases and the available information and the internet. And so it's quite quick now compared to what it was 10 years ago.
All right. Well, that is all our time for today. And again, as Joey said, if you've got a product or service and you're in their sector and you're thinking about export, just reach out to Joey and we have a chat and discuss what your next steps could be. Like you said, we're kind of that entry, that front door into the whole network of support that's out there to help companies, enter into international markets. So, as we mentioned, Joy's going to be following up with an email with a survey with a copy of the slides. So you'll be receiving that within the next 24 hours. So we want to thank you for joining us this afternoon and for your questions. And we hope everyone has a good rest of the day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.